that sent everyone reeling. Julius Erving.
That's got to be a 50 ball. He took off just a little inside that free throw line, one hand and double clutch it. Magic Johnson gets it on.
Oh my goodness! Oh my gosh! You win, young fella!
There, Michael in on top. Everybody, 49.
It's over! It's over, ladies and gentlemen!
Wow! Petey, I thought we'd seen it all!
The slam dunk, one of the biggest and most exciting plays in basketball that brings eyes to the screen. Such an incredible feat that the NBA centered an entire contest around it. The athleticism required to soar yourself 10 feet in the air while propelling yourself to the basket and slamming it down with sheer force into the hoop while still managing to not injure yourself even over defenders, leading to legendary posters. But where did this come from? Who was the first to just slam the ball in rather than shooting it? How did the move get popular? How was it innovated upon to the point where we have windmills, behind the backs, and other exciting dunks? Well, today, we'll be discussing the evolution of the slam dunk. The legendary first dunk was made by Jack Ingles, not to be confused with Joe Ingles, who is currently in the NBA and has a similar spelling name. Jack Ingles was an incredible athlete, playing baseball, football, track, and basketball all together. He was superhuman for the time, with Hall of Famers Nat Holman and Frank Morgenweg stating that he was the best player they both had ever seen. Playing in the Philly Basketball League, New York State League, and the Hudson River League as one of the very first professional forms of basketball, long before leagues like the NBA were made, and playing for the Troy Trojans, which are now a Division I NCAA team. But how did the dunk come to be? Well, Jack Ingles was known for his innovative way of scoring. Because dribbling in basketball did not become mainstream until 1901, people are still used to just passing and shooting the ball in more stationary positions and taking set shots, meaning that they would have the ball passed to them, take their stance, and shoot the ball where they stood without really jumping or moving, almost like they were shooting a medicine ball, similar to how you see people shoot free throws now. Jack Ingles was one of the first ones to hone this dribbling rule and harness his momentum into his shot, shooting while running. This meant Ingles was one of the first players that helped invent the layup as well, by driving to the basket with his shot rather than shooting from a still position. Hank Lucetti then came and perfected it with his one-handed finger roll shot. However, I actually subverted your expectations a bit, because the first dunk had nothing to do with Jack running towards the basket with his shot, even though that's one of the things he was known for and innovated, but rather in a more childish way. Now, this isn't me discrediting him since no one else had done it before, but have you ever had your friends climb on top of a basketball goal and then they hand you the ball to drop it in for you to score, and then you joked that you dunked it even though you were literally sitting on top of the hoop, kinda like this? Well, that's basically what Jack did. With the first basketball courts being cages, Jack climbed on top of the cages like a jungle gym and held on to them while his teammates passed him the ball. Then, while hanging on the cage, dunked the ball with the other hand, while technically not being against the rules. But when we talk about dunks, you obviously probably weren't picturing someone just holding onto the basket while getting the ball. You want to see people flying through the air with the ball. So when did this form of the dunk start to become popular? Joe Fortenberry would help move us into a more modern era. Well, modern relatively speaking, by being the first player to dunk in a professionally organized game. He dunked the ball in 1936 with the McPherson Globe Refiners, a team that would play for the Olympics that year, but he dunked the ball in one of the biggest basketball stages, Madison Square Garden. I don't know how to really say this without getting the video striked, but Funny Mustache German Man, you know the one, was actually a huge fan of basketball and helped popularize it around the world during these Olympics. That was when he wasn't doing, everything else. This made the dunk explode, with Arthur Daly, a New York Times reporter, winning the Pulitzer Prize for his article that marked the historical event, stating that Joe pitched the ball downward into the hoop, much like a cafeteria customer dunking a roll into coffee. The dunk also came off an incredible pass from his teammate, making one of the first dunks also one of the first alley-oops. Even today, when you search up Joe's name, links come up titled things like the first dunk in history or other similar articles, with it being a huge part of any biography on him. The move continued to explode, especially obviously among tall players. The basketball at the time, as described in one of my other videos, was very non-uniform, not having the spherical shape you're picturing and being all misshapen and uneven. This meant that tall players saw it as easier to use the same skills and talent they use when rebounding or blocking to score, and just place the ball in the basket. People started to get very annoyed and saw this as an exploit of the game. Fall Gallen, who we will talk about a couple times throughout this video, wrote in a book stating, "Dunking does not display basketball skill, only height advantage." He even went on to basically predict players of the future, like Giannis, LeBron, KD, Wembanyama, Jokic, and other tall dominant players by stating, "A team of giants who are smart and fast have been both the prayer and the dream of the basketball coach. These dream men whose heads graze the rim of the baskets and who with one hand dunk the balls through the hoops, like children inserting pennies in gum machines, may yet have to seek another sport in which to excel." This made Allen propose to change the dunk from 10 feet to 12 feet, which people still make the case for today. However, this is one of the few things from Naismith's original game that will likely never change, as the rim has always remained at 10 feet. Joe Fortenberry also contributed to the offensive goaltending rule because of this, along with George Mikan, another big part of today's story, as well as being another person I've done a breakdown on. Finally, we get into the 40s and 50s, where the NBA was finally made. Claude Johnson, a basketball historian, stated that many people started dunking during these periods, helping popularize it, including Bobby Cyclone Gale, who played for the Cornell in early mid-1940s, Ivor Ivy Summer of St. John's, Kent Murdoch of Utah State, and Elmore Morgenthaler of the New Mexico School of Mines and later Boston College. Claude Johnson is also credited with other feats such as the creation of the Black Five, but that's a story for another video which we'll discuss later, so stay tuned. Bob Kirkland stepped onto the stage during this decade, who was known for his style of play involving a lot of dunking. Defenders stated similar points to Allen and tried saying they took offense seeing the dunk as an insult that broke an unwritten rule. Because of this, players started to become more physical and it became very dangerous. When an offensive player would go up for a dunk, defenders would charge at their legs, essentially tackling them or causing them to fall while in the air, which of course caused a lot of injuries and players to be removed from the game. Kirkland's biggest rival was George Mikan, who despite being a huge player himself, spoke out against the dunk, saying, "We used to dunk in pregame practice, not in the game." Celtics legend Satch Sanders stated that it was the only way to deal with dunkers, stating, "In the old days, defenders would run under you when you were in the air. trying to take people out of the game so they couldn't play. It was an unwritten rule. Due to this, the NCAA actually created a ban on dunking, stating it was not a skillful shot, like Allen had stated. Now, while they may seem like the villains in this story with the ban, again remember that defenders were literally taking out people's legs. This was done for the dunker's protection. The NCAA cited the ban of 1967 due to injury concerns, citing 1,500 incidents where a player was hurt around the backboard the season prior. The ban was called the luau sender rule by the press after a legendary player that used this shot, now known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There was many conspiracies around this rule later, stating that it was a racist rule to try and stop African American players. However, this was debunked by other several media outlets, as there were plenty of white and other nationalities that were dunking. While the dunk was banned in the NCAA, the dunk still continued to rise in the NBA, as well as becoming more creative and innovative. Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell were absolute legends and icons. But without even touching on their accolades like Bill's 12 rings, both players were able to dunk incredibly, with Wilt dunking from the free throw line, as well as Jim Pollard, which instituted the rule that you could not dunk on a free throw attempt, and both feet had to remain planted behind the line. You also remember the 12-foot proposed dunk by Allen? Well, Wilt and Elmore Morgenthaler humiliated Allen by basically saying, "You can raise it as much as you want, it won't stop me," with Wilt still dunking on the basket and Elmore scoring 41 points on the 12-foot rim. So the NBA decided to instead widen the paint, with an effort to stop dunking as well, with collaboration of other exploits explained in my George Mikan video. As the years went on, the dunk became more of an art, becoming creative and perfecting it, with Dr. J and his teammate Daryl Dawkins slamming it into the basket with force and breaking multiple backboards, much like Shaq would later. Coney Hawkins also became an icon for the dunk. Many other players went on to break the backboard, including all-star forward Gus Johnson of the Baltimore Bullets, shattering it 3 times during his career in the 1960s and 1970s. Luke Jackson in 1968. In the ABA, Charlie Hentz broke 2 backboards in the same game on November 6, 1970, which resulted in the game ending. Arthur Arhett tried to come up with a solution with a patent for a rim that had give but immediately returned to its original position, making dunking safe for the first time by significantly reducing the shattering of the backboard. It was later introduced to the NBA in 1981, but breaking the backboard would still be considered a technical foul by the league, and rightfully so, given the hassle that comes after breaking it. The sheer power and creativity of these dunks brings us to our next chapter. Despite George Mikan's previous criticism of the dunk and him being a previous commissioner of the ABA, under Dave DeBusschere, in 1976, the ABA hosted the first ever dunk contest using a red, white, and blue ball, featuring Dr. J jumping from the free throw line, as well as other legends like George Gervin and Artis Gilmore. The same year, the NCAA would lift the ban on dunks. The NBA would later pick up on this after the merger and add it to the All-Star Weekend in 1984. The same year, Georgia Wells became the first female player to dunk at West Virginia University. It was obvious that the move had become a central part to the basketball game. It seemed the dunk contest came into creation at just the right time as well, with players like Spud Webb, Dominique Wilkins, and Jordan entering the league, with their dunk rivalry as well as their athleticism in the league as a whole, elevating the dunk contest and rippling out to other basketball fans and players to create their own creativity and never before seen dunks. In the 90s, the trend only continued with Kobe and Dee Brown, as well as Kobe's teammate breaking the goal multiple times. In the 2000s, the arguably greatest dunker of all time stepped into the scene with Vince Carter's dunk of death and 360 windmill in the contest, as well as Dwight Howard's legendary Superman. In 2002, Lisa Leslie showed the world again that women can dunk too, becoming the first player to do it in the WNBA, creating a chain of dunks by Candace Carter, BG, Elena Del Don, and more. Nate Robinson would win the dunk contest in 2006 at just 5'9", and the judges were all the previous winners with Dr. J, Kobe, Wilkins, and MJ. The trend only continued in the 2010s, with Blake Griffin dunking over a car, as well as Levine and Gordon's 2016 duel. However, as time went on, players started to reach the peak of limitations with the dunk, given just human capabilities, airtime with gravity, and so on. There were less quote-unquote never-before-seen dunks, and more of just paying tribute to those that did it before, or players would try something new and fail. There were less superstar names in the contest, with Mac McClung winning the past few years while only playing 2 games a year in the NBA and being stuck in the G League. And people argue that it needs a new and refreshing format. It lacks the sparkle and jaw-dropping moments it did before through the creativity and breaking through. But despite this, the dunk is still fundamental to the league, especially today, just like a home run to baseball or fighting to hockey. When a player posters another, it's posted all over social media, the news, ESPN, highlights, and so on. It's one of the most pushed notifications on the NBA app. The game just wouldn't be the same without the dunk, starting from someone hanging on a cage before making its way to the world stage of professional basketball and street ball players performing windmills like their favorite players. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, you guys really seem to like when I do these historical breakdown storyline type videos, and I did a lot of research for this video, so I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like and a sub. My original sub goal for this year was 1K, but y'all have blown that out of the water. So now let's aim for 2.5K by the end of the year. Anyways, I love you guys, and thank you all for the support. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next one.